September 27th, 2005. I'm Ted Koppel, and this is Nightline. Tonight, a small pill sets off a big debate.
There's no doubt, there's no question about the safety of Plan B.
My concern is for the women and unborn children in this country.
In the battle over emergency contraception, did politics trump science?
This is an example of political influence that's hijacked the FDA.
At least one FDA official agrees. That's why she quit.
This is contraception. It is not abortion. The only connection it has with abortion is that it can prevent them.
Tonight, the morning after, fighting over birth control. Perhaps because it's been called the morning after pill, there is some genuine confusion as to what it does and does not do. So let's begin by explaining what Plan B, the other name by which the pill is known, let's begin by explaining what it is not. It is not the same thing at all as RU-486. I can see some of your eyes glazing over already, but a few years back, RU-486, which was developed in Europe and ultimately approved only by prescription here in the United States, was a raging political debate. It was, quite simply, a chemical abortion pill. Plan B is not. In reality, it works just like a high-test birth control pill. But if taken as soon as possible, within 72 hours after intercourse, it prevents pregnancy by stopping the release of an egg from the ovary, or, and this is the controversial part, by preventing the implantation of a fertilized egg in the uterus. Plan B has actually been available by prescription since 1999. Controversy arose 4 years later in 2003 when the drug's distributor tried to get the Food and Drug Administration to approve Plan B for sale over the counter. A few weeks ago, and the event got lost in the Hurricane Katrina story, back at the end of August, the director of the FDA's Office of Women's Health resigned over the agency's decision to keep Plan B from being sold over the counter. Susan Wood will be giving her first television interview tonight. But first, some more background from ABC News correspondent Lisa Stark.
In December 2003, two FDA advisory committees met to decide whether Plan B, the morning after pill, should be sold without a prescription. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor, 23-4.
Yes.
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 The pill must be taken within 72 hours after intercourse to be effective. That's why advocates say it's important it be made over the counter, so a woman doesn't have to wait for her doctor to prescribe it.
I am opposed, vote no.
Dr. David Hager is one of the 4 on the advisory panel who voted against Plan B. An OB/GYN from Kentucky, Dr. Hager describes himself as pro-life.
I did not feel comfortable at that time indicating that I favored over-the-counter sale with no age limitation whatsoever. A 9, 10-year-old could purchase the medication as easily as a 25-year-old.
After the vote, Dr. Hager said he was asked, he won't say by whom, to write a letter to the head of the FDA.
I wrote a letter to the commissioner just explaining my concerns to make sure that those had been conveyed to the commissioner's office.
In May 2004, the FDA, in essence, sided with Hager. In a rare move, it rejected the advice of both its panel and senior staff, citing concerns about usage among younger girls. The FDA told the manufacturer, Bar Pharmaceuticals, to reapply. Bar did that, asking the drug be made available over the counter for females 16 or older. Those younger would still need a doctor's prescription. 5 months later, speaking at a Christian college, Dr. Hager took some credit for that.
I argued it from a scientific perspective, and God took that information and he used it through this minority report to influence a decision. You don't have to wave your Bible to have an effect as a Christian in the public arena.
I'm Wendy Wright with Concerned Women for America, and we're very disturbed by Plan B's promoters' emphasis on access, but not on women's safety.
Wendy Wright is with Concerned Women for America. Its mission is to bring, quote, biblical principles into all levels of public policy. Her organization played a lead role in fighting to keep the drug prescription only.
This will end up making particularly minor girls more vulnerable to statutory rapists. A 40-year-old man could go in and buy this drug, give to a 13-year-old girl in order to cover up and continue his sexual abuse of that girl.
The FDA promised it would make a decision by January 2005. The deadline passed. At that point, Senators Hillary Rodham Clinton and Patty Murray decided to play hardball politics.
We said the Senate will not approve Lester Crawford as FDA commissioner until he gives us a timeline for an answer on whether Plan B will be approved as an over-the-counter drug.
The FDA has a very broad and critical mission in protecting the public health.
A deal was struck. Crawford was confirmed as FDA commissioner in July after the FDA promised a decision on Plan B by September 1st, more than 2 years after the original application was submitted. Meantime, Wendy Wright and her group kept up the pressure on the FDA.
The FDA staff and the advisory committee did not look at the overall effect that making this drug easily available can end up having.
Is that their job, or is their job to determine if a drug is safe and effective?
When we are at an epidemic rate in the United States of STDs, we as a society need to be taking a more serious look at it.
If a young woman chose to use emergency contraception, then would she not come in to see her physician for regular contraceptive prescription, to be screened for sexually transmitted infections, to have her pap smear?
On the last Friday in August at 4 p.m., the FDA finally made its announcement. It decided not to decide.
The agency is unable at this time to reach a decision on the approvability of the application because of these unresolved regulatory and policy issues that relate to the application we were asked to evaluate.
The FDA asked for another 60 days for public comment. Senator Murray was furious.
Rather, it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. We are only left to wonder why, and the only answer I can come up with is politics.
I think the FDA has shown that it's sensitive to the concerns of our society, and they have rightly looked beyond some ideologues within the medical community to see how will the public be affected by this decision.
The final decision on Plan B will be in the hands of a new FDA commissioner. Just last week, Lester Crawford resigned as head of the FDA. This is Lisa Stark for Nightline in Washington.
When we come back, I'll talk with Dr. Susan Wood, who headed the FDA's Office of Women's Health and who resigned from that post in protest.
This is ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Lunesta.
Tonight, will you be able to catch a great night's sleep? Or will your restless mind keep chasing sleep away?
I got to remember that appointment tomorrow. Did I send the car payment?
Introducing Lunesta, a sleep aid that can give you and your restless mind the sleep you need. Lunesta helps most people sleep all through the night and works quickly, so take it right before bed. Lunesta is non-narcotic and approved for long-term use. Of course, do not use sleep medicines for extended periods without first talking to your doctor. Be sure you have at least 8 hours to devote to sleep before becoming active. Until you know how you'll react to Lunesta, you should not drive or operate machinery. Avoid taking Lunesta with alcohol. All sleep medicines carry some risk of dependency. Side effects may include unpleasant taste, headache, drowsiness, and dizziness. Ready to catch a great night's sleep? Just climb into bed and leave the rest to Lunesta.
Tomorrow, the debate over race in the wake of Katrina, the different perspectives, and the bold actions needed to address race and poverty in America. Plus, the government's new recommendations for your kids, what they should eat, and how to get them to do it on World News Tonight.
I want to walk up the side of the mountain. I want to walk down the other side of the mountain. I want to swim in the river and lie in the sun. I want to try to be nice to everyone. I want to walk up the side of the mountain.
The all-new 50-mile-per-gallon Civic Hybrid from Honda. It'll reverse your thinking.
Home loans confused Julie. What are points at escrow, she'd wonder. Then she went to Washington Mutual. They explained the process step by step. Now Julie's never confused.
And the answer is...
Basal ganglia.
basal ganglia.
I'll take it. And I don't need the extended warranty. So when you say it's not you, it's me, you're really saying it's me.
Exactly.
Do you want the snow pea?
Nice work, Julie. Nice work.
Susan Wood headed the Office of Women's Health at the Food and Drug Administration for 5 years, until her resignation just about a month ago. She previously worked as a biochemist at Johns Hopkins University, and just to be sure that there's no confusion, why did you quit?
I quit because I felt that science was being overruled at FDA and women's health was being damaged.
Let's start with the first part. You're saying science was being overruled by whose definition?
Well, I think by the definition of all the ways we've always done business at FDA, where science and the scientists and medical professionals at FDA are the ones who review the evidence and make a decision about whether a drug should be approved or not approved.
What's the question? What's the issue that was resolved?
Right. Well, in this case, it was about emergency contraception. It has been approved for prescription use for women of all ages and has been caught up in delay after delay, even though there's consensus amongst the scientists and health professionals there that it should be approved, not just for prescription status, but more importantly for over-the-counter status, so that women can have access to it when it's most effective to prevent an unintended pregnancy and ultimately to prevent abortions.
What would you say are the main reasons that, and you call it the consensus, so clearly there were some scientists who did not agree, but the preponderance of scientists who voted on this did agree?
Well, I would actually still call it a consensus, because the scientists you're referring to who didn't agree were the few of the advisory committee made up of outside experts. They voted a preponderance to bring it over the counter and that it was safe and effective for women to use over the counter. What then happened...
Do you remember what the vote was?
It was 23-4, I believe, in favor and unanimous that it was safe for women to use over the counter.
And within the FDA?
Within the FDA... You know, FDA does overturn its advisory committees on occasion, and sometimes, and usually when they do so, it's for good reason. In this case, the FDA staff at every level within the agency, multiple levels, agreed that it should be approved for over-the-counter status, and agreed that it was appropriate for women to have access in a timely manner so it would actually work more effectively.
You keep saying women. I gather that some of the controversy has to do with girls. If I have to go, or if my daughter has to go to our physician, to her physician, and the physician has to write a prescription, there is at least a barrier between her using it recklessly and using it in the way that it should be used.
This product is very safe. There's not much concern that it will cause as a safety issue. The question that was raised by a very small part of the agency was whether or not they could understand the label and use it properly. But we've never asked that question about any other product. We don't ask it about pain medication. We don't ask it about cold medication. We don't ask it about condoms or any other contraceptive method that's available over the counter. This is very, very safe. There's no question about its safety. There's no question that it's more effective if it's used within hours, not within days.
Clearly there is a distinction between a normal contraceptive, I mean a pill that can be used as a contraceptive, which has to be taken before the act of sex, and Plan B, which is designed to be taken after.
And that's really the central difference, is the timing. It works in a mechanism very similar to many other birth control pills. The mechanism is very similar, it just has to be taken after. And the sooner you take it after, the more effective. If you need it on Saturday morning, waiting until you get to a physician, either by phone or in person, to get a prescription by Monday morning, it's too late, and it doesn't work. And the worst thing that can happen is that you would have an unintended pregnancy.
You can understand that those who are concerned about it on moral grounds would argue that by making a pill like this available to an underage teenager, a 15, 16-year-old, you could be encouraging reckless sex. The knowledge that even after you've had sex, it is still possible then to take a pill that will prevent a pregnancy is likely to make the sexual act more, not less likely.
Actually, there's no evidence to that effect, and in fact, there's evidence to the contrary, that it doesn't change your contraceptive behavior, it doesn't change sexual behavior, even in teens.
How do we know?
There are studies that have been reviewed, not just by me, but by, again, all of the outside experts on the advisory committee and all of the staff within FDA, and they examined that issue very carefully and came to the conclusion that there is no good evidence to be concerned about that, and in fact, what you want to do is prevent an unintended pregnancy and prevent the abortions, which is, again, common ground. I think the issue around teens and sexual behavior, we have to look at what's already available. There are other contraceptive methods on the market. We know that increased access to contraception doesn't change behavior. What it does change is the risk of an unintended pregnancy.
All right. There are political consequences to making this drug available over the counter, and I get the sense that political pressure may have been behind what happened, or at least that you perceive it that way. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Back with Dr. Wood in a moment.
My name is Sarah, and I'm not an actress. I went through 2 or 3 years of not being able to sleep. I got great sheets, I had the perfect pillows, nothing worked for me. I went to my doctor. She said, you know what, I'm going to give you a prescription for Ambien. I tried it that night, and it helped me get a good night's sleep. When you go that long without sleep, you have no idea what it's like when you finally get to sleep. I'm very happy I found Ambien.
Prescription sleep aids are most often taken for 7 to 10 days as needed, or longer as advised by your doctor. Until you know how Ambien will affect you, you shouldn't drive or operate machinery. Side effects may include drowsiness, dizziness, and diarrhea. You shouldn't take it with alcohol. All sleep medicines carry some risk of dependency. Memory problems can usually be avoided by taking Ambien only when you can devote 7 to 8 hours to sleep. Talk to your doctor. Ambien works like a dream.
The Verizon Fiber Optic Broadband Network.
Connecting more people
to gaming, video, music, and each other. My job?
My job, make the network even stronger. Faster, more powerful.
With our growing team of experts, we're building the only large-scale, fully fiber optic network in America.
To deliver the next generation, phone, internet, and TV. I'm proud. I'm proud.
I'm proud. We're proud to be Verizon. Our people, our network.
I'm proud to be
proud to be part of.
I'm proud to be
proud to be part of.
I'm proud to be part of the.
The offer that made history is about to be history. The GM employee discount is ending. Only 72 hours left. You pay what we pay, but only until Friday.
Last time Lost Malcolm David Kelly was on.
You like candy?
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, I'm going to let you have these after you tell me what's going on the island.
Jimmy wants answers when Malcolm David Kelly returns, plus ABC's George Lopez and an all-new Jimmy Kimmel. Good times coming up, only on ABC.
Honey? Move! You're blocking my view. Hey, I didn't think you'd make it.
Ah, did you miss me?
We got a cash loan at Northwest Title Loans. It only took about 15 minutes with no hassle and no credit check.
Come on, what's the catch?
No catch. All we needed was the title to our car, and they loaned up to the maximum value on our vehicle.
The best part? We got the cash that day, plus we still have our car.
For a location near you, call 1-877-511-CASH.
And I'm back again with Dr. Susan Wood. Would it be fair to say that you felt that the decision that the FDA made was made not on the basis of science, but made on the basis of political pressure?
I have to agree with the first half of your sentence. I can only tell you what I observed, and that was it was not made on the basis of the scientific and medical evidence. And not just me, but all of the scientific and professional staff who normally are part of the decision-making at the agency, because they are the ones who review the evidence and evaluate it and make the recommendations, they also were cut out of the decision. People who should have known and should have been part of the decision-making were not in the room and were not aware of what the decision was until very late in the process.
Forgive me, I think you're being a little coy. If it wasn't made on the basis of scientific evidence, other than political pressure, what can you think of as having been a reason that would have caused the FDA to make the decision it made?
And I'm really trying not to be coy, but my problem is I don't really understand why we couldn't see this as common ground. I honestly was very hopeful that this would get approved in one fashion or another, either through having prescription status for younger women and non-prescription for older, but some way it would be approved because the science was so compelling and the evidence is so clear. And it's common ground. This is contraception. It is not abortion. The only connection it has with abortion is that it can prevent them. So honestly, and perhaps I'm naive, but honestly, I was hopeful that the science would win out and the health of women and families would win out. And so when it didn't, I can only say what I saw, which is we were out of it. And I'm still surprised.
I understand that. What other possible reason can there have been than that someone brought pressure to bear, which I describe as political, but if you have some other description, tell me what it is.
Well, I won't disagree with you on that point. I mean, because I honestly don't know where it came from either. And so if it must have come from somewhere, but because I'm a scientist, I tend to try to say, what do I know? And I honestly don't know. But I won't disagree with you that it must have come from somewhere else.
Wasn't there nearly, or indeed I think that Senator Clinton in particular believed that there was a deal, that a deal had been made. What was the nature of that deal, and do you have any understanding as to why that deal collapsed?
Well, it sounded like semantics to me. I mean, I know as much about the deal as from what I read in the newspapers, was that Secretary Leavitt and Commissioner Crawford had agreed to take an action. And they did take an action. So technically, they were correct. They took an action, which was a delay.
Clearly not the action that Senator Clinton expected.
Not the action that was suspected, which was a decision. And there was no decision made here technically, but I would argue that the decision to delay approval of this product over the counter is in fact a denial. And this was again in part why I resigned, because by couching it as a delay and a non-decision, in fact denied women of all ages, not just teens, but women of all ages, access to timely use of this product.
If you had thought that it was a brief delay, in other words, if you thought it was only going to be a delay of a couple of months, you wouldn't have resigned.
Probably not.
So you obviously think that what we're talking about here is not really a delay, but a way of shelving it and not dealing with the issue.
Right. The mechanism is a rather bureaucratic one to potentially open it up to rulemaking, which, to make a long story short, it means opening up to a process that usually takes many months to years, if in fact that's the way they go.
And you're saying that insofar as health is concerned, insofar as the impact of this physically and psychologically is concerned, there's no difference between this and a rubber condom.
I would actually compare it to oral contraceptives, or in terms of its availability, to a condom or spermicides or the Today sponge.
Right. Are oral contraceptives, just help me out, are they available over the counter?
No, and there's an ongoing debate about that, but they're not needed on an emergency basis. They're effective on chronic use over long periods of time. For emergency contraception, we're talking about single use of a product that's very, very safe and needs to be taken very, very quickly, within hours, to make it most effective.
Else the young lady will be pregnant.
She certainly will be at risk of that, yes.
But you can understand how certain people who are worried about the moral impact of this will say, look, the next step then is going to be these same people who are pushing Plan B are going to also be pushing oral contraceptives as also being available over the counter, because the same logic that applies, not exactly, but the same logic. You want to prevent pregnancy, you want to prevent the consequences of unwanted pregnancy, let's have contraception all around.
Well, I think at this point the focus is on emergency use, when you need it right away and can't wait for prescription. And there are many women and girls who don't have regular access to a physician or a place of regular health care. Look at the uninsured just as a start. And we have to make sure that they are not the ones put at risk simply because of the barrier of getting to a physician, getting a prescription, and then getting it filled, all within a window of time that will be essentially closing on them in terms of making sure it's effective.
What are you doing now?
Well, when I left the agency, I didn't have a plan. And I certainly didn't expect this kind of attention from national and international media. So what I'm doing now is thinking about talking to people, because I feel so strongly about the importance of science being what drives our health decisions. It's so important to people in their everyday lives. So I'm continuing to try and figure out a way to tell people about that, as well as to keep working in health policy to help women and families.
Dr. Wood, good of you to come in. Enjoyed having you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be back in a moment with a word about tomorrow's Nightline.
To receive a daily email about each evening's Nightline and a preview of special broadcasts, log on to the Nightline page at abcnews.com.
Oh, man, a paper jam.
Paper jam. Get Pam. Get Pam.
I am.
We always get slammed with these paper jams.
Give it a good wham.
I couldn't find Pam, so I got Graham.
Why are we rhyming?
Guys, the presentation will be fine. We've got an easy button.
When it comes to making copies, every business has an easy button. It's called Staples. Our copy and print center can handle any job, big or small, when you need it done right.
Here's your diagram, ma'am.
Staples. That was easy. Come in and get color copies for just 39 cents now through November 12th.
We're making better choices every day to keep our cholesterol and blood pressure healthy.
Like choosing to eat more fish and less red meat.
And now we're choosing a new multivitamin, One-A-Day Cholesterol Plus.
Introducing new One-A-Day Cholesterol Plus, the only complete multivitamin with polycosanol and heart support.